All right, so we are recording. Thank you all for coming on this Saturday. I'm Robert Hernandez, chair of this Bylaws committee. And today we're having an open town hall related to the proposed amendments. These proposed amendments are in draft form, meant to collect feedback from the membership. Before I get any further, I want to share with you a link in the chat. Anyone can view. Here you go. This will be our working document, draft doc. So if you have the chat open, click on that link. You should be able to view a Google Doc. I'm using that as our working document for this meeting. In there, you will also see a link to our current bylaws. I'll put that in the chat as well. These bylaws were last updated in July 2018. And also in there is a collection form, a feedback collection form. So I'm also putting that in the chat. So we want feedback from everyone as much as possible to make sure that these are strong, valid, proposed amendments that are put onto the ballot. And keep in mind, if you don't agree with these amendments, you don't have to vote for them, but we want to make them as strong and as solid as possible for the benefit of the membership. So that's what we want to do today. Also in the working document is an agenda that I've outlined there. And one of the things that we wanted to put in there was just to take a moment to remember that 50 years ago during the Chicago moratorium, we lost a legendary journalist who was killed 50 years ago today. And so out of respect, we'd like to take a moment of silence for just a few seconds. So let's honor him.
I would just add Chicano moratorium. You said
Chicano.
Chicago.
Oh, no, okay, sure. Chicano moratorium. Thank you for that. Ruben Salazar is a legendary journalist that influenced many of us, myself included, being a Ruben Salazar scholarship recipient from CCNMA. So thank you for that. And for all the legendary journalists that helped make this organization possible, and you are each among them. Okay, so let's first start with introductions. I'll introduce the committee, the bylaws committee. Feel free to say hi, but I'll just do it quickly for time. We have Arielis Hernandez, Barbara Rodriguez, Christina Silva, Dino Kieki, Geraldine Coles Azucar, Keldy Ortiz, Luis Joel Mendez Gonzalez, McNally Torres, Will Cruz, and myself as chair of the committee focused on bylaw amendments. Just to kind of catch you up on where we have been meeting weekly since today. We've been meeting every Saturday. This morning, earlier today, was our 9th meeting. The goal is, like I said, we want to make changes to the bylaws. We want to modernize them. But one of the things that became very clear with the election coming up is that we won't be able to tackle all of those things. So we did have internal priorities, but we also wanted members to give us their recommendations for what they thought were important bylaw changes. And at the bottom of the bylaws document, you will see, what page is that? Starting at page 7, results from the bylaws priorities form. So this was last updated in July, the type of members who participated, and the results in a bar chart of the top 4 priorities the bar chart was hard to read, so underneath that is what I call the fugly translation of the breakdown of what the members that voted recommend the priorities and our focus should be within this committee. We are focusing this time around on student representative and student membership. We're focusing on the election, and to be blunt, that is what brought many of us together to talk about the need of changes in the bylaws. And the third part is transparency. There are very important topics that we felt we could not tackle with the timeline in hand. So we're gonna pick them up after this election, starting September 28th. Those you can see on the list of some big topics on there. Of course, it's modernizing members, the types of members, and one that was very strong is also how might the organization hold members accountable for behavior in or outside of events, right? So those we didn't want to take lightly, and so we're doing that in the next phase. Now, the next phase means that this is going to be a committee that continues to do its work. I will no longer be on the board, so I will be replaced by a few of the committee folks who are running for the board. If it is required that for the subcommittee, someone from the board chair the committee, and then it is opened up to the membership to participate in the committee. And that invitation is not too late. If that is something you want to participate in, please reach out to me and we can add you to this working committee. We just ask that you do the commitment. And I must applaud this committee every Saturday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. We've been coming together on time, and the work that they've produced that we're gonna show today, I'm really proud that this is, the work that they've done has been pretty fantastic. So it's been an honor to serve with them. Other things in the timeline. So we are collecting feedback now from members, right? We want to collect that early in the process. And then we're going to take the feedback that we get from all y'all today and from the forums. We're going to probably give it a week for people to have the opportunity to see the proposals. And then we're going to incorporate them into our draft. This will be the document. We're not going to change it to another URL or anything like that. So this will be the document that we'll use, that we therefore turn over to the board. The board will review or what have you, and then that is what's going to show up on the ballot. The ballot opens September 28th and goes for a week, and it requires 2/3 majority of those who voted. Not 2/3 majority of the overall membership, just 2/3 majority of those that have voted past the amendments. We have been in contact with our bylaws lawyer. We've had several conversations with him, and so we've shown him that some of you may have noticed that we wanted to have this town hall a week ago, but we made a decision, even though it was kind of awkward, we made a decision to postpone a week because we wanted to ensure that you had time with the bylaws proposals, or the proposed amendments. We didn't want to spring it to you during the town hall because, you know, you might need time to study them, to look at them, to think about them. And so we were also wondering whether we should have waited for the lawyer to approve or give us edits before we give them to the public, but we all decided to give it to you as quickly as possible. So hopefully you've seen it, you've had it for a week, and we will, after collecting the feedback from all of y'all, like I said, make changes, go to the lawyer, talk to him, make any changes, present it to the board, and then put it on the ballot. Let's see. All right, so one of the things that I think I already talked about it, the results of the bylaws priorities form. If you have any questions about that, let me know. One thing I should have said at the beginning is that this is a meeting and this is a town hall, and the whole premise of this is to get your feedback. I'm sure there may be some disagreements. I asked each of you, including my committee members, to be respectful to everyone and their opinion. I will step in if there's anything that goes awry, but this is a group of people that are spending time on a Saturday because they're genuinely passionate and care about this organization. And with working with that premise, we'll have a really productive dialogue. You all have the ability to unmute yourself. You all have the ability to turn on and turn off your camera. And so we want this to be an engaging conversation with the focus of how do we make the organization better through bylaws. One thing I'll add is that looking at the results or the comments that came from the bylaws recommendation form that went out a few months ago, there's a couple of people that were confused about what bylaws do versus what the organization should do, or what board members should do in terms of like issues to tackle. Bylaws is a framework that helps the board, but also its members know how to do daily business and roles and responsibilities. So that's what we're focusing on as much as possible. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to speak up, and we can do that. Okay, so without further ado, let's go into the document. I'm gonna copy and paste the text again for those who showed up late. One thing to reinforce is that our work as a committee, well, we're working for the board and the board is working for you. So our recommendations get sent to the board, and then the board decides what to do with the next steps. If the board chooses, they can say, no, we don't want to do any of these, or they could choose to say only one of these, or they choose to do all of them, which is our hope that they will do, right? But the board makes that call. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so you can follow along there, or you can call it up onto your own tab. I recommend that you have the bylaws open as well. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go with present on the student rep, then present on elections, then present on transparency. I'll try to keep each category to around 10 minutes. We'll have each subcommittee chair present on what they're recommending. And the first one up is the student representative. We have a legend there. The yellow represents what is being changed. It's highlighted yellow and a strike through. And the blue is what we're replacing with that change. It's blue, underscored, and italicized. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen there. And feel free to ask any questions. I now have the chat open there. Not that they can make changes, but put it on the ballot. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. All right, so let's start with Luis Joel, who's been an amazing chair for this subcommittee. With support with Will and Aurelis. Luis Joel, why don't you take it away?
Yes. Good night to everybody. First of all, I'm very thankful to see all of you in this town hall, because this represents a lot of weeks of hard work to try to make this bylaws a better one and to modernize it. Obviously, I will let Aurelis talk later, but I just wanted to add that all these changes, specifically the student members part, I make it as a student member, as a student that day to day talk with other student members and understand their needs, what they talk about, what they like about NAHJ. So we did this with all our heart. Specifically, I can't talk about me. I do it with a lot of passion. As Robert said, we met up all days, and specifically all Saturdays. And that will be all. I'm sorry if I can talk any bit more, but my first language is not English, and I don't feel very comfortable explaining all the document, but I will let now Aurelis talk a little bit.
Arelis? Did we lose her?
Okay, I can talk if she's not here.
I can do it too if you want me to do it.
I would do it. There's no problem.
Okay.
All of you talk Spanish too, so I'm going to be confident about myself.
Do
Okay.
it.
You're very confident.
So there's a few changes that we made to the students part. As you can see in the number 5, you can see that we erased the part that it says that a student member consists of persons engaged in a program of full-time study in a recognized educational institution of higher learning. We erased the part that it says full-time because we really think that we can't go against students that they don't have the opportunity of not being a full-time student. We all know the economic crisis that many countries, like for example Puerto Rico, are living actually. So many students, many journalism students, they can't study full-time. So we thought that the best thing for us and the best thing for the members was actually just putting in a recognized educational higher learning program. The other part is, you can see in the other question, that a student member has the right to vote in the election of the student representative of the board of directors and the right to vote for the entire board. In the past, the student representative didn't have the power of voting for some board decisions, or at least it wasn't clearly stated. So we wanted to put it explicitly, so the student representative in the future could have the right to vote to the decisions that the board make. I saw a question that I want to say, but I'm going to say the number in Spanish because I don't know to say it in English. We actually have 813 student members, so that's approximately like un 30% de la membresía total aproximadamente. So that was the motivation why we make these changes, because we are a lot of student members and we don't only receive scholarships or we don't only participate in internships. We are also very active. We coordinate workshops. We also produce newscasts, produce newspapers, and that was the motivation to put that there.
And let me interrupt you for a second, just to put, I'll try to put some things in context beforehand. I forgot to do so. So one of the motivations to tackle on student representative, and we also tackled some stuff related to student membership, was Angelica, who is an outgoing student representative on the board. She worked the entire year with the assumption of not having the ability to vote on board matters. We included her, we always had her opinion, and no vote was, no debate came down to one vote. But it turns out, I don't know how we, the president and the rest of the board of directors, forgot that the previous person, Tomas, had full voting rights. And talking to past presidents, students, student reps had full voting rights. And so when we read the bylaws, it could be interpreted in either way. And we wanted to reinforce and ensure that this never happens again, that the student representative on the board is treated like a full-fledged board member. And as we develop that, we've also decided to make some changes as student memberships, what we'll talk about down the road. But I wanted to put that context in there. Also, feel free to raise your hand virtually in the chat, and we will stop for answer questions and things like that. So, okay. Sigue.
Sorry, I don't find the little hand thing on the chat, so I'm raising my hand.
Oh, just say you want to ask a question in the chat. Just type your name or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
but I do want to make I just want to make a quick thing, because you mentioned that before students never had voting rights. If they were voting in the past, they did so in violation of the bylaws. But that is clearly not the case. It's in the bylaws. And when I was president and all the other, when I was on the board, pre and post presidency, that was never the case. So students were never allowed to vote on the board, with the exception for anything related to students. And the same thing goes with student members. They could only vote for the student representative on the board. I just wanted to make that clarification.
So there's been some confusion because we were incorporated in California and then reincorporated in DC, and the bylaws changed a bit in that process, I believe. The fact that there's inconsistency is why we want to address that inconsistency. And based on the recommendations from those who filled out the form and this committee's discussions, we believe that the student member on the board should have the ability to vote on board matters. And clearly there was inconsistent. I found 2 or 3 student representatives that did vote on board matters. So whatever it is, we are making a recommendation that that be solidified and clear that we're doing that. Now, remember, if you choose, you don't like that amendment when it's on the ballot, if it gets on the ballot, just vote against it.
Perfect. So in the point 6.2,
and hold on for 1 second,
okay,
just to call on the
problem.
people. Frenchie, do you want to ask a question? Frenchie? I think we answered a question about your percentage of the student percent is 30%.
26.7 to be exact, courtesy of union. Thank you.
And Angelica said that she was not under an assumption a member told her that she had no vote. So, okay. So Daniel Rivera, yes, the whole point is that this document, he asked if we will get a copy of the bylaws. This document is the copy of the bylaws. We'll share it with the members. This is the working document. I'll remove the agenda and put that stuff at the bottom, just so we're transparent and keeping things on the record. But we want to make it as clear as possible so people can look at the bylaws. Okay, so any other questions? Great. So, Luis, wait.
Okay.
Nelson had a question. I think the gentleman by the name of.
I can't see if you raise your hand, so in the chat I can see. So Nelson, do you have a question?
Yes, I just want to make sure, is it the recommendation of the Bylaws Committee? What we see here in front of us is your recommendation that's going to go to the board, or are you coming to us to give you feedback on what you're thinking prior to making your final determination?
That one. We want feedback. We want feedback. So feel free to make changes or make proposals of changes. We are, the concept is probably the concept of having the student rep have voting is probably not, that's the recommendation. What we're hoping to collect is, rewrites and edits, and you can express your concern. But if it does go on the ballot, if you don't want them to have that ability, what you do is you vote. You don't vote for it, right? But here we want to get the feedback and thoughts and things like that. Yes.
Has the Bylaws Committee looked at other professional, similarly situated organizations on how they treat student members? Are they allowed to, who elects them? Who are they allowed to vote for on a general election? Are they allowed to vote on regular member matters or just student matters? Could you give us that feedback before I give you my feedback?
Sure. A couple of us have served on other boards, IRE and ONA. We haven't gotten to the student membership part yet in terms of what the ability student members can vote on, but we are making a recommendation on that. So why don't we wait on that? But just for context, we have looked at and have served on other boards. And student representatives on boards have full voting rights for the Online News Association, and student members have full voting rights on as members voting on things on a ballot. They're included as equal members. So I don't, I'll tell you what, why don't, well, if you want to get
my feedback
on,
if I may give you my feedback, I am all for the student members electing the student representative. I don't think obviously, I don't think attorneys get to vote on the student representative. The students choose their own student representative. Once the student representative is elected, they serve the interest of the students at the board of directors. At that particular instance, they should have a vote on the board of directors when any and all matters come before the board of directors on behalf of the students. I do have a concern of the students being able to have a vote in electing the general members or the board of directors themselves for various reasons. It's been my experience that student members get to elect their own student representative but not necessarily get to vote on the general election. Depending on the composition of your membership, you could find, for whatever reason, unfortunately, there is apathy at times within professional associations. There is a diminish of regular members. You could have an instance where you have a lot of students perhaps can be composed of a greater percentage of the membership, and they themselves basically become a big voting bloc, but they not necessarily will have, unless of course all of us could decide, we can change the bylaws so that we can structure the way we are. But I think there's a distinction between the student member and their availability of the voting in general. Is my understanding in terms of professional associations. I happen to be an attorney by profession. I can tell you in the bar associations, they structure it so that only attorney members vote for the general boards. Of course, there are student members also, but do consider that and take that into consideration.
Yes, of course, we consider that, but we felt that if there's an NAHJ president for student representative, they should have the ability to vote for that. They'll have the ability to vote for, what we're proposing is have the ability to vote for everything, kind of like the regional, when you vote for regional director, they will get the vote for the regional director, they will get the vote for the student rep. No one else gets to vote for the student rep, just like I don't get the vote for region 1 director because I'm on region 8. But also make sure you put your feedback, if you have feedback about the general concept, put that in there. But of course we want to collect the thoughts and reactions. We do want to make sure we have enough time for everybody, for all of these things. So I don't know, I'm open to advice from attendees and the committee in terms of how we structure this in order for us to get general feedback. So I'll tell you what, why don't we present on the section and then we'll open it up for general feedback, collect general feedback. Let's present first and then get feedback, okay? So I know there's a few of you with questions. Let's have Luis Joel present on the changes and then we'll get your feedback, okay? So let's complete the presentation on student rep. So go ahead. You were at 6.2, I believe.
Yeah. So in the point 6.2, it says the member of the board of directors shall consist of the 9 officers of the association who are designated as directors in the section 7.1, the 8 regional directors elected in accordance with the section 6.3, and the student representative. And
oh, got a little disconnected there, but some of the changes that we're making is to clean up the language, because a lot of the language added confusion, and so that was the approach. And again, our bylaws lawyer also reviewed it as well. Luis Joel, did we lose you? Okay, you're back.
Sorry, se me fue la
No
luz.
Okay,
in Puerto Rico understand me, but I'm here.
There was an earthquake earlier during the meeting, so I'm glad you're safe. Let's move to 6.4. 6.4.
Yeah. So in the qualification definition was the student representative must be a student member in good standing of the association and a student at a recognized and accredited institution of higher learning who has demonstrated an interest in journalism. That was the part that we added, in journalism. And we erased the part that it said broadcast or print journalism or new media. In the second point, it says election and term. The student representative shall be elected exclusively by the student members and shall serve a 1-year term, whether or not a successor is elected at the next annual meeting. The election of the student representative shall be held in conjunction with the annual meeting of members. or if an annual meeting of members is not held or the student representative election is not held at the annual meeting, at a special meeting that may be called for that purpose by the board of directors. So in the next point that is called nominations, it don't have any change. So I'm going to pass to the next one. And we added this point, the point, or better said, the letter D, that it says voting. The student representative is a member of the board of directors and has the right to vote on all matters before the board of directors. In that point, we try to look for what Robert said, to confirm that now the student representative have the right to vote in all the decisions that take the board of directors. That was the intention of adding that letter D. So I'm going to go to the other page, and those are the changes of the student representative. I would like to explain the change in the 6.2, that it says the member of the board of directors shall consist of 9 officers of the association who are designated as directors in section 7.1. We erased this part of who are designated as directors in section 7.1 because there is not any definition for the section 7.1. That was a huge problem that we find in these bylaws, that there were some parts kind of confusing. So we want to clarify most of those points. And in the part of qualifications, as I said in the beginning, we think that all the students that study journalism, it doesn't matter they study in a part-time study or in a full-time study, they should have the same right as being a student representative. And in the part of the exclusive vote of the students to vote for the student members, as I think that Nelson said, the student representative look and hear the needs of the students and the students members in the association. So that was why we added exclusively to make it more clear to understand. So that are all the changes in the student members. After finishing or before finishing, I want to thank all of your feedback. As Robert said, we're going to read all that later, and we're going to see what we can add to make these bylaws even better. So any question, I open to answer it with my bad English, but I'm going to try.
All right. So thank you for those who expressed interest. So Frenchie is back with a better internet connection. She'll ask a question, followed by Julio Cesar. And then Angelica asks a question. And hopefully I haven't missed anyone in
Veronica,
there.
you missed
Veronica. Okay. So Veronica after Julio Cesar. Okay. So Frenchie, your question.
Hi, everybody. So my question isn't about the student changes per se. So my question is, you mentioned earlier that you present this to the board and the board makes its own mind, right? So can they say, oh, look, they didn't say here, I don't think you changed, like, let's say, for example, I don't think you put elections can be suspended, right? I don't think you did that, but can they say, oh, wait a second, the committee didn't suggest XYZ, let's add XYZ and put that to the vote. You know what I mean? Like, can they go ahead and put things that they want the members to vote on that you guys did not present?
That's a good question, and I don't know, but we will be transparent and we will let the members know. It would be a very bad look, right?
Yes.
So we have been putting, the board has put us to take on the charge of how do we make changes to the bylaws. And so we make those recommendations, and we're, one reason to have this town hall is to be transparent and to have this dialogue. So of course, if you disagree with these amendments or proposed amendments, I would encourage you, how do you make them stronger? But if you don't agree with the concept of them, the way you get to express that is through that vote. And that would be my message to the board. If you don't like the fact that we are specifically saying you cannot cancel the election, as a board, you could strike that from the things, from the ballot, but we're being transparent and that will be known. And I think that's a bad look. I can't speak on behalf of the president or the board if they will do that or how they want to proceed. But all I can say is that wouldn't be a good move. So I'll though, that said, I will try to get an official answer. And I don't know how to report back I can report back to you. I don't know if I can report back to the members, but my understanding is, you know, they'll review it. It would be a bad move to try to do something that controversial, but I'll try to get an official answer. My committee mates, please take notes so we can make sure we can identify the follow-up things on there. Julio Cesar, you had a question, and then Veronica.
Yeah, I had some feedback to what Nelson said earlier when it comes to giving student members full voting rights when it comes to voting for the board themselves. I know that as a former student member and as a current regular member, I think that student members should not be treated as, and I know this sounds harsh, but I know that this is not what Nelson, I know that what I'm about to say is not what Nelson, not the way that Nelson meant it, but I know that some student members still feel this way, is that NHJ student members should not be treated as second-class citizens or second-class members. And honestly, just personally, when it comes to having the issue of apathy within the organization, I think if student members that you guys said earlier make up like 30% of the membership, if they're given a more involved role from the beginning, then they'll want to be more involved once they graduate and become full regular members. Exactly. That's just the feedback I had.
Great. Thank you.
That's great.
Veronica?
Yeah, I'd like to start by prefacing that I don't think students, you know, just as that it's not that students are considered to be second-class citizens. Actually, the NAHJ organization and many of its members for the longest time have had as one of its missions to really mentor, to create a pipeline, to create the next generation of journalists. So it's not that they're second-class journalists, but I think it's important to clarify that NAHJ is not a student association. It is a professional journalism organization. And I really think it's very important to make that distinction because at this point, students still have, you know, not all of them will become journalists. Some actually venture off into public relations or other careers. And so they not only not have the experience, they don't have the long-term knowledge, or like I said, the certainty that they're going to practice journalism one day. And so in terms of voting for all board members, or making certain decisions, especially when at this point we have encouraged a larger base, membership base, many of which do not pay dues. They've been given free access, free membership, or minimal membership. I just think it's really important to put that into context. These are there are decisions that are going to be made within the organization that are going to be very long lasting, and they require really thoughtful, a really thoughtful process. And again, it's not about second-class citizens. It's really a reminder that this is a professional journalism organization, not a student organization. And from what I was told when I joined many, many eons ago, is that really the participation of students was brought into the board was really because they wanted to have an advisory capacity from the students to know what is, you know, at one point or another, people who are in the profession for a long time lose touch with what's going on, with what the younger students are thinking, what their, what are their projections. And that was part of the thought process, from what I was told, is to bring them into the fold so we could know what the next generation of potential journalists are thinking and how we can help pave that way. So I just wanted to put that into context and why I think it's important to keep that in mind in terms of these bylaws changes that I don't really think are necessarily what need to happen in terms of voting rights, and keeping in mind that this is a professional journalist organization. I just wanted to be able to clarify and put that into context.
One thing to note is that the bylaws will be presented to the current state of members. So students are not going to be voting on this proposed amendment. But I would state, as someone who teaches these students, a fair number of them are professionals now. The framing that you have to wait your turn, the whole game has changed. The internet has changed everything. Social media has changed everything. my students win and beat out professionals for awards. And, you know, one of the messages that we got from those who did the recommendations for priorities was to modernize. And I think this matches other organizations. But again, you know, transparency, I will vote for it. You don't have to vote for it, right? So those are things to think about, but it's good context to hear let's go to Angelica, who asked the question. Do you want me to ask the question in chat, or do you want to ask it?
Yeah, my question was to be more specific about what interest means, because it could be classes, it could be internships. Like, we know what interest means, but we should be more specific in the official document. And I also wanted to point out something, and the reason students have free memberships, it's because we don't have the salary that professional journalists have. One point. And the second one is that it's a professional organization, but you have more than 10 professional members and only one student. So
so also we give free memberships to professionals as well in hardship or for whatever reason. That's something to think. But to answer your question, and something to be transparent about, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but we don't have the bandwidth to police whether someone signs up to be a student member opposed to paying the full member price, right? Our staff isn't out there vetting what you're doing and how you're registering or what have you. But as part of the elections currently, if you run for this position, you're going to get vetted by the elections committee. And that's how they're probably going to find out whether, you know, you're really a marketing major. And you know, just because you're running on the ballot does not mean you're going to get elected. I've been on many boards, and again, this is my opinion, I've been on many boards, and many board members are afraid of PR people coming in or what have you. There's many of us that have been forced out of this industry for financial reasons, and they have to do PR, but they're still a journalist and they still have those beliefs. This is a modern problem that we'll have to tackle, and we'll have to tackle after this election timeline.
Yes,
but
I just wanted to add something. See, so in this moment, I'm going to answer in Spanish because I wanted to say it clear. First of all, quiero agradecer muchísimo a Verónica por el comentario que realizaste, porque sin duda alguna no lo había pensado y es totalmente cierto. Me parece que hay que tomarlo muchísimo en cuenta. Y lo que voy a opinar, como mencionó Robert, nosotros vamos a respetar la decisión que ustedes tomen y el feedback, la retroalimentación que ustedes nos brinden. Pero yo estoy totalmente de acuerdo con Angélica. La razón por la que la membresía de estudiantes es $25 es porque muchos de nosotros no tenemos los recursos económicos para costear una beca de mayor cantidad. Así que esa es la razón por la que está en ese sentido. Y como también dijo Robert, la razón por la que se moderniza el reglamento también es para atemperarlo. Yo creo que simplemente como una manera de ejercicio podemos revisar la cuenta de Twitter de NAHJ y podemos ver cómo la asociación a muchos de los que les da retweet son a publicaciones que realizan capítulos de estudiantes, que usualmente nos movemos, que coordinamos y organizamos talleres, que producimos noticiarios radiales y que desde nuestras capacidades y herramientas en la asociación y en estas universidades también creamos oportunidades para otros estudiantes. Así que eso, de una manera bien contundente, aporta al desarrollo profesional del periodismo. Y estoy totalmente de acuerdo con Angélica en ese sentido. Y de nuevo, yo pienso que el punto de Verónica es totalmente cierto y esta es mi opinión, pero no la voy a imponer sobre lo que digan los miembros. Así que si los miembros están de acuerdo con lo que menciona Verónica y quieren que es lo mejor para el reglamento, que se acoja. Pero quería mencionarlo porque siento que es mi deber y porque como Angélica también, ambos somos miembros estudiantiles, ambos hemos presidido capítulos de estudiantes y conocemos realmente los problemas y los escollos que nos enfrentamos en el camino. En muchas ocasiones hay decisiones que se toman en la junta de directores que nos afectan de una manera u otra. Nosotros quisiéramos tener el poder de votar y de levantar nuestra voz y decir, mira, esto nos afecta. Y quizás un voto es cierto, un voto quizás no aporta a mover una decisión de un lado a otro, pero sí es un llamado contundente de que no estamos de acuerdo en algo, con un sistema democrático y que sin duda alguna no realmente no quita, no resta. y esto es algo que los voy a decir y tengo dos citas que he estado pensando estas pasadas semanas y las voy a decir. Primero, no hay NAHJ que te puedas imaginar sin miembros de estudiantes. Solamente con imaginarte NAHJ sin miembros de estudiantes es imaginarlo sin lo que es hoy. Y segundo, realmente no estamos quitándole derechos a los demás miembros, al contrario, estamos sumando miembros. Y sumar derechos, al contrario, nos suma y nos hace más ricos como asociación. Así que ese es mi punto de vista. Y nada, solamente quería ser honesto de mi parte para no reservármelo. Y muchísimas gracias a todos los que opinaron, específicamente a Verónica, porque estoy de acuerdo de que, aunque no coincido con su punto, tiene una razón de ser. Y lo argumentó muy bien y lo entiendo a la perfección. Así que eso era todo. Muchísimas gracias.
So let's do this last question from Cindy before we move to the transparency section. Cindy, do you want to ask your question about not majoring in journalism?
No, I don't. I had a couple of questions. One, I just want to make sure it's clear. Is it the 2/3 of the voting members, not 2/3 of the actual members that are needed to?
Correct.
Okay.
We made a change a couple years ago to go from 2/3 of actual members to 2/3 of voting members. That was a big election a couple years back that put the organization in jeopardy.
The only other thing I was going to say, which I think other people have said more eloquently than I probably can, is just to define in some way what is interest. I didn't major in journalism. I went to a school that was right up the block. It was cheap, and it was what I could afford. And I think a lot of our members are in a similar situation. They would love to go to a prestigious school, but the money and the wherewithal isn't there. So, but if there's an interest, internships, we have to figure out how we define that. Internships, you mentioned, working on your student newspaper, but again, some students may be in a school where there isn't that. So if there's some way to define that so that it's clearer, that I think it would be helpful for the voting membership to, because they're also going to kind of stumble over this. But I fully support this. I agree with what Luis said. If anything, the student members make us stronger. And I agree with what you said, that I have students who are doing amazing work. And so, I consider them professionals. So I'm glad.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the elections. This subcommittee was chaired by Dino, serving with Christina and Keldy. Dino, take it away. For those who are following on the bylaws, this is section 5.12. We'll start with a new subsection C.
Yeah, I first want to thank my cohorts on this, Keldy and Christina. We did some heavy lifting. We met a lot of Tuesday nights, and we got a lot of work done. So one of the first things that we did was under section C, we added this section which says that voting shall begin prior to the NAHJ annual conference and results announced at the gathering. In the event the annual meeting is delayed, a vote of the membership will take place no later than the second Friday of October of that year. The board shall not cancel an election. This is in response to what occurred this year, but we're also putting into consideration here the fact that if something cataclysmic occurs and there cannot be an election, it allows for us to decouple the election from the convention on the condition that we have the election no later than mid-October as stated here. The reason we chose that date is because sometimes we do meet with SPJ, and SPJ typically has their conventions first or second week of September, so we're making allowance for that just in case. But we wanted to make sure that we had an election every year and that the election cannot be canceled.
Yes, and just to add some more context on this, talking to the bylaw lawyer, there's some laws in DC. So if you're incorporated in DC and there's a situation while any nonprofit can't hold an election, DC law says that you must hold a next election within 15 months from when the election was postponed or canceled. And the lawyer said, you don't have to put this in the bylaws, right? It is in the law to do it within 15 months. But we as a committee strongly feel that we want to clarify how we're treating our elections. not to tie up the hands of future boards, but really to give them that flexibility, but also to stress what we think is incredibly important, what is an election, right? Where we as journalists is very, I will say, us being journalists, how we cover city government, state government, federal government has influenced a lot of the bylaws decisions that we're presenting today. That is very much part of what we're presenting. So this here is probably the biggest thing that we're showing, but let's talk about the other election related things and then we'll open it up for feedback. So again, put your name in there and I will start collecting that. Dino, the next one.
You want to go down the list and then we'll
Yeah.
ask look at the questions?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
fair enough. All right, 8.1, I think we just cleaned up the language a little bit. We removed where it says hold an annual meeting immediately to where it says the board of directors shall meet following the election of directors. That allows flexibility to meet either the night of the Noche de Baile or to meet on Sunday morning, which is more traditional. But anyway, we wanted to allow some flexibility and not lock anybody into a vice hold by saying that they had to meet immediately afterward. So we just wanted to clean up that language a little bit and provide a little flexibility to the president, who will then be charged with calling the meeting. Okay. On section 5.8, we had a long discussion about this, and what we thought about was that we wanted to formalize a transition period between the outgoing board members with the incoming board members. So we wanted to say, and we are saying in this proposal, that the outgoing board of directors, the outgoing board members, excuse me, will immediately become non-voting ex officio members. Whoops. Did you change that, Robert, or did my screen
Sorry.
go?
No, that was me. I wanted to look up something on the bylaw, sorry.
No worries, okay. The outgoing board members will immediately become non-voting ex officio and remain on the board for 30 days in a transition period. At the end of the 30 days, the outgoing board members are removed from the board. This just wanted to try to make an attempt at some continuity. It will be a volunteer basis, of course, since they are not going to be voting members. But again, we wanted to express the desire for some continuity and communication between the outgoing and the incoming folks.
Thank you. Next one.
Okay. All right. Next, we wanted to address the notion of executive sessions. The language on executive sessions was incredibly broad, and we interpret that to be just a little bit too freewheeling. So what we decided to do is to follow the format that some of our city governments, some of our educational boards, and others follow. And this is a language we came up with. With respect to executive session, a motion must be made in open session with a stated purpose and a recorded vote to go into executive session. The reasons for moving into executive session must be one of the following: legal matters, acquisition, land acquisition, or personnel matters. The motion on any action must be made in open session and recorded by the secretary, and the vote must be made in open session. The vote shall be recorded in the minutes. In other words, we're not taking away the tool of executive session whatsoever. What we are doing is that if a vote is taken, if action is taken as a result of the executive session, that the vote be recorded in open session. If we decide to give our illustrious executive director a raise, the personnel discussion can take place all they want in executive session, but the vote must be recorded. That is our recommendation in this amendment.
For transparency, right, talking to the bylaws lawyer, they said that this isn't, this isn't standard practice in other nonprofits. But like I said, how our ethos in terms of how we work and hold other organizations accountable, and how state and city government handles their local, the local officials do business. This is what matches what our expectation and our experience has been covering local government. That it is an executive session that allows for rigorous debate, that allows for tough conversations, but any official board action should be done public and on the record, and the members have the right to see who voted for what, right? So that's, this part actually is overlap between, it's more transparency than it is election, but we wanted that they did overlap a little bit there. So that is the last one in connection to the elections and a bit of transparency. Let's open it up to questions. The first question from Frenchie. Frenchie, do you want to ask your question in terms of the word postpone?
I always, my internet crashes every time I speak. It says your internet is unstable. So go ahead and answer the question. I'm going to shut off my mic.
So Dino, she says, I wonder if we need to address postpone. Some could argue we never canceled elections, we postponed them. So do you want to talk about that? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, two things. Well, with respect to what occurred recently, my members that the word cancel was used, not the word postpone. I think that would have been a whole different matter if the word postpone had been used. Maybe defining the word postpone is not a bad idea, but at the same time, we also didn't want to put a stranglehold on the board in the event that they saw something of such significance that the voting did need to be postponed. But the guidance we're providing is that by the second Friday of October, a vote must be taken. So we're providing some leeway, some flexibility within some constraints.
Yes. And we want to.
Could it be? I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I wonder. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's Diana. I'm wondering if what she's trying to say is that maybe it should say cancel and or postponed, you know, the wording, because I do think that there were some board members who used the word postponed versus the word cancel. So maybe it's just a matter of how we parse it.
There's a different definition between cancel and postpone.
Right.
The board
But
shall
maybe we
not
should-
cancel an election. They
But
can
should we-
postpone it, but not cancel it.
I hear what you're saying.
Yes.
By
That's
saying
really
the limits
clear.
es lo que piensas.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, Robert, go ahead.
That's what Dino just said. You can postpone it because you need that flexibility, and you know another pandemic may come, but you cannot postpone it past the second Friday of October.
You
And
can't
by not-
postpone indefinitely.
Correct.
Right.
No,
That's
but you
I
can't
got you.
cancel it.
And you can't cancel it just
Right.
by default because we're saying an election must happen by the second Friday.
Right.
So
But
we're giving that flexibility based on the situation that we went through to make sure it is clear and not to tie the hands of a board.
So where does it say that though, Dino? Porque it looks like
Right here, where it says under big letter C, the board shall not cancel an election.
right. But then where about the part that would say shall not postpone it beyond such and such a date?
In the sentence before it.
And also just to address during our talk with the lawyer, per DC law, an election, if it were postponed for some reason, and if we do not put this in the bylaws of the second Friday, an election has to be done within 15 months of when the election was supposed to be had. So
Well,
that's
see-
automatically gonna automatically happen. Whether
But
we
see, that's
put
what
it-
we felt. I hear you. But that's where we felt that in essence you were canceling it because that gives somebody an extra year term. 15 months is effectively canceling an election, even though they
Correct.
don't say it that way. We were feeling it. I mean, those of us who were
correct.
protesting it. So that's
Yes,
why
correct.
where you've got the board shall not cancel an election, which is good. I mean, that was what we were trying to say because I'm trying to think when they did this, they did not call it canceling. They said they postponed it. They didn't,
So to put some context, there was the use of the word postpone, but also in a dispatch, the use of the word cancel, meaning cancel for the year. But what happened is what we want to avoid, right? That's a clear motivation. We want to avoid that. And one of the things Dino did really well with this phrasing is that we're in essence saying you cannot cancel it. You can have some wiggle room, but an election must happen in a calendar year no later than the second Friday of October. So it's clear, it's concise, it gives the board some wiggle room. to have to, you know, like they're doing this year, right? This year they separated it from the annual board, the annual conference, and having it in September. This election aligns with this bylaw recommendation, right? But they can't postpone it longer than the second Friday of October, right? So there's no way they can cancel.
See, I guess that's what I'm thinking, that, and this maybe it's just me, and like you said, Dino and Robert, it's the wording, because it says to me, in the event the annual meeting is delayed, comma, a vote of the membership will have taken place. Should it not say must take place? The grammar seems off to me.
What about shall take place? That's better.
There, shall take place no later
There you
than
go.
the second Friday of October. That sounds good, Dino.
Right on. That looks good.
Oh,
Shall
she's a
take
great
place.
editor.
No. I'm
Didi, I was talking about you today. You're great
Hi,
editor.
McNally.
So yeah, I think we're all in the same spirit. If there's a wording choice like that, this is exactly
Yeah.
what we want to get, to make sure we're addressing any of those concerns. Everyone knows the spirit of what we're aiming for here, right?
Yeah.
So,
So shall
let's-
take place, Dino, not have taken. Shall take
Yeah.
place.
Right.
Yeah,
We'll take care of it.
you gotta change the have taken.
there you go.
Have,
There you go.
shall take, and take the
Take.
N out.
There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go.
Perfect.
Shall take place.
Done.
Thank
Because the
you.
beginning says voting shall begin. Shall take. Yeah, perfect, Dino.
Okay.
Gracias. And the board shall not cancel. Perfecto. Gracias.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's the
Julio
pickiness when you're a
Cesar?
copy editor, you know?
No, perfect. Thank you. Julio Cesar, you also had a question, I think, or a
And
comment?
also Nelson after that.
Okay, Nelson afterwards.
I just wanted to thank the committee that worked on this. Same thing I wrote in the chat was, thank you for separating the two, meaning the conference and the election, and for removing the annual meeting language, because the conference just, it excludes so many people because of costs, that it can't honestly be called an annual meeting of members.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So some dialogue about that, or some context about that. It turns out, according to the lawyer, most nonprofits have their election at the annual meeting. The election is taken and the results are given at the annual meeting. We have three things. We have the annual conference. We have the annual meeting, that's usually that Saturday morning. And then we have the annual election, which we open up the polls, I think, right before the conference, and the polls close with the results being announced usually Saturday night at the Gran Baile. So the lawyer, we had to always explain to the lawyer, these are different things and they're not interchangeable. And he confirmed that it is totally okay as long as we spell it out in the bylaws of what we're doing compared to other nonprofits in DC. So he is okay with it. He said, like Keldy said, and I'm saying, that we don't have to say the board shall not cancel the election, but he's totally okay with us spelling it out specifically in the bylaws, as well as clarifying about the annual meeting and making sure that the board has that flexibility to separate the annual election from the annual gathering from the annual meeting. Nelson, you're next, and then Marilyn, we'll ask, you'll go next. So Nelson?
When are NHJ annual conferences usually held?
There's a range from,
It's from July to like September,
Yeah.
essentially.
yeah, July to
And it would
September.
be, yeah, between the months, like maybe like just after the July 4 weekend and no later than Labor Day, or the second, like after the week after Labor Day. That's generally when NHJ has had its conferences.
Yeah, it depends on whether we partner with an organization, right? So SPJ has theirs in September. And there's so many factors in terms of contracts with the hotel and what city and all that good stuff. Was that your question, or do you have another follow-up?
Yeah, that was, yeah, I needed
Okay.
to get that point of information before. And in terms of that first point that you're setting a hard date of October, you might want to keep it flexible, given that DC law gives you 18 months. You might want to I heard the word said within. You might want to also use the word within and set it up not to do 18 months, because as the other commenter made, you can have an election, you can postpone it for a year, and it's like not having an election. So you don't want that either. But at the same time, by you choosing the Friday, second Friday of October that year, given that range you just gave me, it might not be feasible depending on what exactly is happening at that particular moment. So you could do it maybe within 60 days, within 90 days, and you don't necessarily lock yourself to that second Friday of October, but it's within a reasonable time as to when you should have had the election. That's one of my comments.
Great. To kind of address that, our bylaws that we members approve and work under override the DC bylaws. So by having this amendment in there, we are saying that an election will take place before and no later than the second Friday of October.
Of course, and
Our
I understand
expectation,
that.
yeah, our expectation 9 times out of 10 is it'll happen at the annual conference, no problem whatsoever.
And I'm suggesting to you that you should give the board, future boards, the flexibility, given that what you just saw what happened this year. All of this was out of the blue. Things similarly could happen in the future. And you might want to give yourself even further flexibility than putting it that exact date in the exact month that you have it. The other point I wanted to speak with you about was the annual meeting. To me, annual meetings seems to be an invitation for the entire membership to gather and for the board to report to us and for us to give feedback to the board. I'm not quite sure in the context of how this is being, where it's being placed, whether this annual meeting is just for the board directors with possibly no participation from the membership, or are you saying the general membership annual meeting, is the general membership annual meeting a different meeting? Because if it isn't, I'd like you to consider not having the annual meeting once everybody goes home. Once the gala dinner comes by and I'm dancing my ass off, I'm out the next morning, or I'm too hangover to go to the first meeting. So I love when you have the membership meeting or annual meeting, however you want to call it, in the middle of the convention so that we can go and speak to the board and hear you all report.
Yes, so the annual membership meeting is what we're talking about. That happens Saturday morning. And the next one is the board of directors shall hold. So I think, so 8.1, there may be some confusion on 8.1. Our interpretation was that the board gets together, right? Following the election. The newly elected board, and maybe we need to say that. So that is different from the annual meeting. So there's two things. The annual meeting with our members, that happens during the conference. And I think the comment was made earlier that it's not incredibly, totally inclusive because there are members who can't afford to be there. But that meeting is the annual membership meeting. There are annual meetings held from the board. So that's a different section, right? The meetings of board of directors is different from the membership meeting.
That's right.
There may be some confusion because one's section 5 and the other one's section 8. So
well, Robert, your suggestion is not a bad one. Why don't you say the newly elected board of directors, etc. Does that clarify it, Nelson?
Yeah, again, right now I'm working, I haven't seen the entire bylaws. As
Okay.
long as this is different from a general membership meeting.
Yes.
In other words, the general membership meeting
Yes.
is not going to be held once the convention has concluded.
Yes.
I'm perfectly fine. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Hey, Marilyn brought up a pretty good point, Robert.
Yes. She's the next person I'm calling up. Marilyn, do you want to unmute and give your point?
I think I put it there.
For those to the benefit, Dino, you want to read it and address it?
Yeah, she is recommending we use the word must instead of the word shall when it comes to a vote of the membership shall take place. I think must is a fine addition. Make it must instead of shall. No biggie.
Just
I think
make
that
them
makes
even.
sense.
Just make them even though. If in the same sentence, either make them all must or all shalls.
That's fine by us.
Either one works. Just make them, yeah.
Let's be
For
consistent.
the record, since this meeting is being recorded, can you say out loud why that
Yes.
change is necessary, please?
Yeah, Marilyn is pointing out that the Supreme Court has ruled that the word shall and may are synonymous. And I'm not going to argue with her citation. So let's just go ahead and make a change so that it reads, voting must begin prior to the NSJ annual conference and results announced at the gathering. In the event the annual meeting is delayed, a vote of the membership must take place no later than the second Friday of October of that year. The board must not cancel the election. How about
Perfect.
that?
Excellent. Excellent.
Robert, would you mind changing that board shall to board must?
Did
Last
I
sentence
not?
in that graph.
Must not.
Yeah. Marilyn, that good?
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
There was a question that I think Veronica had that
Yes.
that we were discussing with Christina. That's not here. The question she has is: was there any discussion regarding changing the board terms to be calendar starting January? And I know we had a big, we had quite a few discussions in regards to that. That like a lot can happen from when the election happens to when we would have the election, like when a new board would come in January. So we felt it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we agreed as a committee that it was necessary to put it, within a 30-day period, because a lot could happen, like a person could lose a job, if women could, get pregnant or something, like, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of potential possibilities that could happen, so.
Well,
Yeah,
the
that is
reason why I
correct.
asked that, because those things can happen within 30 days later. And the reason why I bring it up is because I know AAJA does it this way. And also, given what happened right now this year, the new board that will get elected basically will have had several months shaved to their term. Also, depending on if, like you pointed, sometimes we have the convention in July, or if we do with SBJ, it could be end of September. And so there is a kind of, there's times where some terms might some board members might actually have more than 2 years and some that'll have less than 2 years. And so to kind of, I know we had discussed this many years ago and nothing happened, but since we're actually having a discussion about making these bylaws changes, perhaps it's something that needs to get discussed so that, it's really a fair situation for all the board members involved, whether it's the ones, right now, like I said, they're going to start, when are the election results going to be taking or place this year?
The election is the 28th and it goes for a week. So I'm assuming at the end of that week. So early October.
October. So,
yeah, we did discuss it, and that's a really good observation. That is not new in terms of the 2-year term or the 1-year term. Could be more or less totally dependent on when the election actually happens, which is historically tied to when the conference actually happens. So that is something that we talked about, but in the end, we felt that this felt like a good compromise. If someone is replaced, why should they stay? I was on the board of the Online News Association, and we did do the January transition. And it was, some of the board members just disappeared. They were upset that they weren't reelected or what have you, and they were gone. But we thought that that was a reasonable compromise. But I mean, what I ask of the committee, just to kind of get a temperature read, I want people, let's for this group that is participating, in the chat, if you can open up the chat, tell me what you think, just as a straw poll, and then my committee, let's kind of tally this up. 30 days, 60 days, end of year, why don't we, or other, put what you think you would like to see as a transitionary period, or say no transition if you want it to be immediate. We're not gonna, this is just a small sampling, so this is definitely not scientific, but at least to get a temperature read outside of the committee, to a larger group from the committee, just to kind of get what people are feeling to kind of get there. And then we'll go back and then figure out what we recommend as best we can.
And
knowing
Robert,
that there
what do you
are
mean by
arguments
transitionary? What do you mean by transitionary? Because, you know, this would also resolve, like, for example, if for whatever reason any election would have to get delayed for whatever reason, then the starting point for any board member would always still be the same. But when you're referring to a transition, 30, 60 days, what are you referring to? Starting
that
from
they
the
overlap
election?
from the results of the election, right? Our example always was Christina versus Dino. Christina replaces Dino. We want Dino to hand off knowledge to Christina, whether it was a contentious election or not, hoping for the betterment for the organization. How much overlap shall there be? There may be a meeting or two that happens over the phone, that happens in person, that ex officios, and I think that's what we said, right? They become ex officios.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It should be ex
Right.
officio. Yeah, because they wouldn't be able to vote. It would just be
They
ex
don't,
officio.
yeah. There was the idea that, there was a previous idea that if we did it in January, the board still has the ability to vote for the remaining calendar year. But that was one of the reasons why we came back to the 30 days. Just to kind of add some context for those who are putting in the things there. Oh, thank you. Julio Cesar did a straw poll. Feel free to put your results on there. I'll just, so you see, I'll say 60 days.
I think the bottom line is, I feel like the committee felt like it is clearly something that people have a wide range of opinions on, and we didn't want to rush it. And so I think the most important thing that we can communicate from this town hall is that there is a group of people who want to be on a committee that is focused on bylaws, that is going to put more work into this after the election to really make sure that we don't feel like that we feel that we have the time to talk about this idea for the next time. So I think, you know, I think it's great that we're going to get additional feedback about it, but ultimately I think we just didn't want to rush this.
This one, though, but the 30-day one is actually in play. There are other things that we said, we're not going to rush it.
Yeah, it was the January start point. I think we started getting into a whole bunch of different things about it that we felt was going to be too rushed.
Yeah.
Part of our thinking on the 30 days is that the exchange of information should be able to be done within 30 days.
Well, a meeting, really, you need a meeting. That's what you need. It's just sometimes the meetings aren't right away. It's the problem.
Yeah, and the president has the discretion to define what a meeting is in terms of over the phone or in person, and we talked about that. Using the straw poll, how do I get there? Make sure that you are voted just so we can kind of get a sense. Of course, this is non-binding. The bylaw committee will take this into effect and then make our best recommendation, and you can totally disagree and not vote for it. One of the things which is going to be kind of challenging is how this is presented on the ballot, right? We don't want wholesale. We want to make these incremental so you can agree with some things and disagree with other. So we'll figure that out. As of right now, not much, but it's still the majority are leaning towards 30 days. Thank you again for the straw poll, for putting that. So we'll you know what? I'll put that on the record. I'll put it in the Google Doc and in my notes as well. So we'll refer to it in the future. Okay. Any other questions in regard or comments in regards to
Robert, Nora's raising her hand.
Okay, I can't see when you raise your hand, so thank you for calling it out. So Nora?
Yeah, hi. No, I'm just trying to get clarification, and maybe I'm getting down into the weeds. But where you say voting must begin prior to the annual conference, do we mean electronic voting? I'm assuming we mean electronic voting. And do we need to set a deadline ahead of that second October of the month, the election must be held? Do we need to, set a deadline of voting
that should be
needs
separate.
to begin?
Those
Okay,
deadlines are separate. right?
Yeah.
Those deadlines are in a different part. It says that 30 days before, 45 days before election.
Okay.
Those are
All
separate
right.
rules, I believe.
Yes, there is a section in the bylaws specifically about the election, and so we're not messing with those. We're going to look at them in the next go around to talk about the nomination process, who can nominate students. That was a challenge this year that we heard. So we're keeping it kind of like before the gathering, open up the polls, and we don't know what the future will be with new technology, but we've been electronic for many, many years.
Sure. Okay.
Let's see. Frenchie, you wanna? Okay, so the question in terms of shall and must, in terms of the entire bylaws, what we can do is change the shalls in our amendments to must. We'll definitely review that, but I don't know if we can do that for the entire thing. I think that is something that
You'd have
for
to
all the
vote.
bylaws.
You would
Yeah,
have
we'd
to
have
vote.
to vote.
Yeah.
And so we at the committee will review, and maybe it's just a bullet point on the ballot that says we're changing all shalls to musts. But let's do some research on that for the 34 entries that are there. And if it's more complex, we'll hold it over for the next election, where we can vote in a more nuanced way to have that conversation, because I'm sure there's some tricky points in there in those 34. But Frenchie, do you want to add anything else? I don't want to lose your internet connection. Okay. I'm good, thanks, she says. Okay, any other questions? All right, so let's move to transparency. Oh, Nelson, yes.
Yes, just want to, I think you mentioned this before, you're running by the lawyer. I find it interesting, as you know, we went through this period of moving from California to DC. The lawyer, whoever drafted the bylaws for DC, decided to use the word shall. The opinion that's being cited, I believe it's somewhere 20, 25 years ago. I looked at Merriam-Webster, what does shall mean? What is the meaning of shall? I have over, as a lawyer again, when I say shall, it's something that must be done. There is no ambiguity. And of course, I understand what every opinion, it's case specific, fact specific. So I'm not familiar with the opinion that's being cited by the Supreme Court. But I ask you to please, and I second what Francis is saying, that if you are going to go and change that word, you're going to have to get the approval for that particular section. Finally, if I may, do take the opportunity, and I thank the committee at this particular moment for going through this exercise. You have the membership's attention. I highly recommend that you don't do this piecemeal. Do it as a whole. Take the necessary time. Provide all your recommendations on the entire bylaws, and give the opportunity to the people to vote on a piecemeal, whatever it is they like or they don't like. But you have done your work, and you do it once, and you do it as objectively as you can with the assistance of the lawyer.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. So we will follow up with the lawyer in terms of clarifying shall and must to make sure it is understood, and then we'll figure out the next steps on how to proceed, at least with what we currently control now, which are these amendments. We can shape it in those ways. So the next category that we're taking on, and the final one, is transparency. McNally was the subcommittee chair for that, working with Barbara, Keldy, and Christina. McNally?
Yeah, I want to thank Barbara, Keldy, and Christina. And I think Christina is traveling, so she was not able to join us. Can you make that bigger? Because I am, well, let me look at, I am so blind. Well, you know, transparency is a big issue for me. And I think that the NAHJ has had some history where the transparency has been lacking. And so there has always been concerns about that. So we have talked a lot about how we can, you know, put some things on the bylaws to improve transparency, because we are a journalism organization. And as journalists, we expect transparency from right government and everybody. So we should hold ourselves at the same standards as we try to hold government and other entities that we are covering. So the first proposed change or addition that we want to make is this one here, the C on the quorum 5.7C. That is very specifically says that at every gathering where there is a quorum of the board directors and action taken, minutes must be taken and published. Simple, you know, and I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Robert or Dino.
Yeah, we talked about in terms of if there's an informal gathering or anything like that, but if, you know, they come to, it's Taco Tuesday, but it turns out we're gathering to have tacos and we're actually talking about work, it might happen. Any official action, any board business should be taken in minutes. You could be all invited to my quinceañera and it turns out we have a quorum, but we're not doing any work. We don't need to take minutes, right? So it's anything that involves the board and board matters where action is taken, minutes need to be documented and published, regardless of whether you call that a retreat or a meeting or a quinceañera. If you do work for NAHJ and action is taken, we want it to be documented. The next one, I zoomed in. McNally, does that help?
Yeah, I have my big screen TV here though. The only thing is like, okay, so if you guys scroll down to 8.6 meeting notices, we would like the membership to take a look at this proposed addition that we want to put. That basically reads that a notice of the meeting, including a copy of the agenda, shall be delivered to the membership at least a week before the meeting and later published on the association website as soon as a meeting has been called. In the event of an emergency meeting, the membership will be notified as soon as possible prior to the meeting via website. The purpose of the meeting, emergency meeting shall be stated. So this is pretty simple, even though there's like, I don't know how many sentences there are on this, is it like 2 sentences? It's very simple, you know, the board is gonna have a meeting, NAHJ can send to all the members, a newsletter saying that the board is gonna have a meeting and a copy of the agenda. So, and that should be done, a week before the meeting is called. And that should be published on the website. Emergency meetings happen. I serve on boards and I know those things happen. So we wanna be flexible on that. The membership will be notified as soon as possible, but we need to know what the emergency meeting is about. So any thoughts, Dino or Robert?
What was interesting is that the lawyer said, oh, you guys really need to do that? It seems unusual. And he also made a comment that aren't the members informed via just the minutes. And one of the things that was clear with this committee is that we want to have true transparency and engagement with the organization, with its members. So that was what we were thinking. We had talked about, should we say, a reasonable time before the meeting or anything like that. We debated that, but we said at least a week. For those meetings that you're planning, at least a week to notify the members. Now, what we were thinking as well is not just on the website, but when we email members, because we email members these notifications as well. And then like McNally said, there are emergency situations, and we wanted to give guidance to the board for that type of emergency situation. Within reason, things happen. You had an emergency meeting, that's okay. You have to do what you have to do, but in the name of transparency, state the reason why you couldn't give us a week notice, and just to do that. There's a couple questions in terms of where to post it. We didn't specify that because it all changes, right? It's social. You don't want to put social media in the bylaws because social media could be replaced by something else. So, but that might make sense as a note to address that. But we'll go to questions in a little bit. I want to shortchange you about the questions. Dino, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that in the spirit of transparency, we're on the right track. This is what we're hoping to accomplish. Maybe there's some nuances, some minor modifications we need to make, but I think we're on the right track, and I think that the membership will be pleased. Let's just continue. I would recommend we continue with this and then get to the questions in just a minute.
Okay. So the next one, section 11.1. Go ahead, McNally.
Again, you know, this is very simple, black and white. IRE does this, and if IRE does it and other organizations do this, we can do it too. And basically what we're proposing here is that the association will keep records of the minutes of all proceedings on all the actions of members and the board of directors and all committees, and they will publish this on the association's website, especially the board of directors meeting minutes within 2 business days after the board approves them. So the board of directors meeting minutes shall include the voting records where the board of directors takes a vote. So I think it was when the board. I think we need to change that from when the board. The board of directors takes a vote.
¿Dónde?
Section A or B, I'm sorry. Or where am I at?
Oh, you went away. Okay, the association shall keep as permanent records.
When? Here you go. When the board director.
Oyes, vamos a ponerle must en vez de shall. ¿Verdad? Ponle must.
Here?
Everywhere where we've got shall, yeah, and you know where we're changing it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So
must
talk about
include.
that.
We will. So the shall and the must, for every
the ones that we're already
that
changing,
we're touching,
right? Perfecto.
Yeah, we will go do that with afterwards. We'll do
All
that guaranteed.
I'll
We'll talk to the lawyer and we'll figure that out.
Okay.
So this is very simple. You know, IRE on their website, they have an area. Everything is there that you can see the board directors when they meet.
No, I think it's great. No, it's a good idea.
I don't know who will object to something like this, you know, and now we live in the world of the internet. These things are done very easily. It doesn't take a lot of time.
And we have a lot of them on there. It's just that they're not always kept up very well.
Yeah, and changes in the website. I don't know if anyone noticed that the bylaw link died because we just made some changes to the website. So one of the things that we talked about was how long should those documents be up there? And we talked about 10 years, we talked about 7 years, and we opted for at least 5. And one of the reasons why we opted, just to be transparent, at least 5 is because we know the outgoing treasurer has that documentation for at least 5 years. So to reach this goal can be relatively easy.
Yeah. And it's not 7? Why is it 5?
Because, well, just for transparency, we said at least 5, and for transparency, we don't know how much work would take to get the other 2 years.
Yeah.
That's
like 8 years.
Where does it say 5? I just said because
right
IRS.
We're gonna go through that now. We're gonna go through that now. That's gonna be the next. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so no, it's okay. It's because IRS is 7. So I mean, when I was financial officer, I had to have them for 7 years. And I mean, I am right now. And
listen,
we talked about 7.
If it were for me, we will have 10. I mean, like I already have all that stuff, but you know, I mean, I don't know what's available.
There was a conversation to have it for 10 years, simply because we can guarantee that if and when this passes, we have those 5 years unlocked. We can do that. That's the reason why, to full transparency, that's the reason why we said 5, because they exist. We can guarantee they exist. The treasurer, the outgoing treasurer, is part of this committee. Right. So that's why we said that.
She has them for 5 years. I get you.
Yes.
She has
and
them.
We could go for 7. It makes sense totally logically for 7.
Just
but
because
we just
it's
don't
legal.
know. Yeah, we just don't know how far back do we have those other 2 years. I'll tell you what though, maybe that's something we can find out to see if we have those 7.
Yeah.
And if we have those 7, let's just commit to that. So
so that's, you know,
we should ask.
Since Didi started asking about that, you know, that sentence is very clear. It's basically we want to make all the financial budgets and statements approved by the board annually, annual audits, and the annual information returns, which is the 990s,
Right.
all be published on the website within 2 days after the board approves them. Boom, that's it. And
Yeah.
a good nonprofit organization should do this to begin with.
Yeah, that's standard.
That's the first thing. That's the first thing that the foundations and donors look to see how transparent the organization is. So this is all, you know, in the spirit of transparency, and I think it's a healthy thing to do.
Okay, so let's open it up to questions. Marilyn asked in terms of where to publish the minutes, where to publish the agenda and such at the beginning. We didn't specify the platform, but Marilyn, and a couple people asked similar questions. I think Cindy, I think Rebecca, feel free to unmute yourself and talk about what you would do. Do you think we need to specify the platform, or do we need to say reasonably accessible to members, or what are thoughts on there? If what we have is too vague, what are our recommendations to specify something?
I think you should make it clear that it's the website. I mean, that's the one thing that will remain constant, is our website, and that's where people can go to and get access to it. And that's to me is the logical place for the posting of our minutes, of our financial documents, all that stuff. It just makes sense.
Yeah, that was kind of our understanding as well, but also invitations will be emailed out, right? That's the current platform. So whatever communication that is established at the time, we're making what we think is a reasonable assumption that the board will act in good faith to deliver that. But and let's be clear and blunt, if we feel like the board may not do that, and we feel like we need to say must be published in a place that is, I don't know, Dino, if you have any suggestions on that, but that's something that
I like what you said a few moments ago, Robert, which was it should be on the website with invitations to the website whenever a significant change is made, such as something like a meeting notice, an emergency meeting's been called. Anything along those lines would be very helpful, and I think the membership would appreciate it. Now, does the staff have the bandwidth to be doing that? I don't know the answer to that. At the very least, everything should be published on the website, at the very least. Preferably, it should be followed up with an email that says X has been posted, a new meeting agenda, whatever. But again, that depends on the bandwidth. I can't answer that.
Okay. For those who express concern on that, does anyone want to chime in terms of platforms and such?
You
Robert,
probably need to say, and maybe McNally could help with a little bit with this, McNally, but I think the wording, there's a recent wording now where you say website, it says website, comma, electronic, it doesn't say bulletin board, but it says electronic repository or whatever means of central communication developed, something to that effect. It's like a common thing. So in case somebody comes up, invents something next year that it's not the website anymore. But it uses the word website, it uses central repository, and then it says, or anything, que la whatever. I want to say IRE uses that.
Yeah, let me check on that. Yeah, website.
But it says that it does use the word website. It says the central website where notices are posted, and then it says comma like central repository or any whatever. It says something about whatever communication, whatever central form of communication is developed where notices are placed.
Yeah, so we'll look at language. The committee will go back and note whether or not we should specify the platform, and if so, how to do so.
All right.
Nelson raised his hand in the comments. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Whatever you do, please keep in mind Article 11 that talks about records and reports. A lot of the things you're talking about a kind of outline under that section 11.1 and on, and make sure that whatever you're proposing in those other sections are in line with this Article 11. For example, you're talking about limiting the amount of time that those minutes would be posted in wherever platform you decide to post it on. I read Records and Reports Article 11 to be much more open-ended, where we have a responsibility as an association to always be transparent to the members, according to Article 11, to make our records and reports available, including the minutes, available to them, and also to individuals from the outside under certain circumstances. So keep that in mind.
I think you are misunderstanding what we're talking about here. I'm sorry. We are not limiting the access to documents. We are opening the access to all these documents, which are not posted on the website right now. What we are saying is that the board or the staff, after the board approves all these documents, the staff has 2 business days to publish these documents. That's not a I
thank you for your comment, and don't please misconstrue. I was in the middle of a comment I was going to make to you. Okay. I applaud your efforts that you want to be transparent. It's fantastic, but also you should have limitations to the membership of the board. Specifically, if you are going to choose a platform, you should choose the NAHJ platform, the website, and have it be specifically open to just members. Because in other associations, I don't believe they have everything that's about the association open to the entire world. So you do need to be specific in terms of a place within the website at NAHJ that only members, student members, regular members will be able to access it. And that this is not going to be for the world to know. And I know you all want to be transparent, but with all the respect, you shouldn't be too transparent with the entire world as it relates to the finances.
No.
Isn't that the way it already is?
I understand what you're saying, but like on the
990s are open to the public. 990s are open to the public.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, I understand where you're coming from, and I think that in our website, when you're a member, you have access to the website that the rest of the membership, that the rest of the world doesn't have. And IRE does the same thing. You need to have your login and have all your password to be able to access that stuff. But the 990s are public record, and there are other places to get it.
It's a good note to review section 11.1. We'll take a look at that. And I hadn't thought about, I have not gone to member clicks, which is anything member clicks is what requires you to log in, right? What's on our website that is public is not member clicks. That's open to the public. So if there is documentation that should be behind the login wall, let's say, we should specify that. So that's a good note.
And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not asking you to be transparent, but I'm asking you to be and work within the context of this entire document. We're kind of going piecemeal at this moment, but there are many other sections within this document that relate to other sections. If you change one, you have to think about the other.
Yeah, and that's in dialogue with the lawyer as well. He's been looking at it. There's some changes we didn't do because they were more complex and were affecting other sections. So yes, duly noted for sure. Julio, Cesar, you had a question about meetings held in Zoom? And then Nora.
Yeah, so basically what I wanted to know is it possible for the board to hold their meetings publicly, like through Zoom, the way that city councils are doing it? If so, is that a choice that should just be left up to the board to do, or is it something that should be compelled through the bylaws?
That is a tough question, and we've talked a little bit about it in terms of what's the bylaws and what's the board. So that's a question,
that is not a bylaws, excuse me. That is too, it's too detailed, for lack of a better way to put it. That's something that, that is not really a bylaws issue. Bylaws should be more like policy. yeah, I mean, I applaud that. I think it would be great if we get them to do that, to put, to make sure that it would be good to do that, but it's not really something that goes in the bylaws.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is something the board would have to take up themselves, vote on it, and make it
Right.
right.
Yeah, so let me give you another example. There is nothing spelled out in the bylaws on how frequent the board should meet. There's, I think, 2 meetings specified, but outside of that, it is up for the president to decide if they want to meet once a week, once a month, once a quarter. And we talked about whether or not we should specify that in the bylaws. And we opted that we can do the minimum and then hope the president or whoever is running the board to really step up to be that transparent. Those are kind of squishy issues where we didn't know if we should approach that. But the world has changed because of COVID, for better or for worse, and the ability to have these events, whether a conference or a board meeting, to have them in these platforms is now a daily thing. So we hope that they pick this up and continue it. I know it's going to influence the annual conference for sure. Nora, you had your hand up?
No, I was going to bring up that we already had stuff behind a paywall that you had to log in to be able to access things that were only for members. But I do agree that the NAHJ really does need to move to having more Zoom type meetings. That is the ultimate in transparency. It will require minimum notification to the members, and if you're available, you should be able to dial in and listen to the discussion. In the past that hasn't been that wasn't available for when the board would meet quarterly or whatever, but now it is, and we should take advantage of it. And I think that doesn't need to be written in, but yes, it's that's the future. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Make sure if your president, the candidate's running for presidency or VP, express that to them as you elect. You want my vote? Please have a monthly Zoom meeting or something like that. That might be something can't be put in the bylaws, or we're saying that we're not going to do it in the bylaws, but that's something that we should express to leadership. Cindy, I don't know if you have a question. I noted there that you had a question perhaps. And then Rebecca, I'll go to you. I'm looking at the comments. I want to allow you to speak if you want to.
Sorry, I'm pressing buttons and it's like a
no worries.
No, I didn't really have any questions. I think Nelson answered everything that I could have had a question about. Was there something else on here? No. Thank you for your hard work. Throw that in.
Rebecca, did you want to add something?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you very much for this meeting. I'm glad you guys are updating our bylaws. It's long overdue. Great discussions. Secondly, I hope that if we do have emergency meetings, that at least we're alerted via social media, because I rarely go to the NHJ website. And so that would be a good way to alert us. Cindy Rodriguez was talking about making sure we archive our minutes, whether we take them off the website. Yes, definitely. We should keep them forever, just in case we have some kind of legal issues we have to deal with, or if you want to say, gosh, what did Rebecca Aguilar say in 2010 about this or that, or, whatever, including what we're talking about even today. And lastly, SPJ, I'm on their board, I'm their secretary treasurer. We are on Zoom now on everything. And we make sure, and we also put out alerts on Twitter and Facebook. Of course, SPJ has a whole team of people in Indianapolis, very different from NHJ. But we make sure everybody knows and everybody's invited to the meetings. We usually have them quarterly. The only time they're not allowed into the meeting in Zoom is if it's executive session. But we let everybody know, hey, we'll be back in about 10 minutes, and we'll put out a social media alert to let you know we're back open to the membership. So that's how we're doing it over there. And, I don't remember, honestly, I don't think we ran it by the lawyers. It was just something that happened because of the pandemic. But it's been going great, and we record them, and then we let people know, hey, by the way, if you didn't make the meeting, here's a link to what we discussed the other day. Since we all have such different schedules. But thank you, you guys, for taking on
Of
the
course.
bylaws because, you know, some of them are so ancient. I mean, I just wanted to say thank you. All right,
Great,
that's it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I put in the comment section again a Google Doc where you can add more feedback about each one of these 3 categories and additional comments. Please know that this committee is going to continue to do its work after the September 28th election, and you're all more than welcome to join it. I do want to allow, if you want to put in the comments, if you want to have any comments or concerns or questions to be raised outside of the 3 topics that we're focusing on for this timeline. But yeah, anyone want to raise their hand? I turned off the sharing of screen so we can see each other. But any questions, concerns, lingering questions, comments?
Yeah, just one final question, this Veronica. I want to thank you all again. I know as somebody who's been on the board when we did the last, you know, how difficult it was to change that 2/3 vote thing. But I did want to make sure that we are all getting notified, because I saw in the comments that the last board member was via Zoom. I was not notified. I was also not notified, even though I registered for the virtual convention. I found out after the fact that the board, that there had been an annual board meeting, an annual meeting, membership meeting, so I missed it. So I think that there has to be something done to ensure that that definitely at least all regular members, all active members receive notification. I did not receive notification, so I just wanted to make sure that that is done.
Yeah, I think there's a good faith effort done by the organization and staff to communicate these things. But things happen, and actually I have an ask for each of you. If you do not get a notification about something, be specific and email it to me and I can look into it. There have been a time that I emailed the academic members, and lifetime members were not in that category of academic, so they were left out. So there are things like that, that if we can track down what that problem is, it would be great. It's not a, no one's trying, I can, from my observation.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it might be, there might be some sort of a glitch of some kind, exactly right. Because, so you know, I received notification of the town hall, so I did register for it. But there's other things that I haven't.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, as a professor who emails their students, and I email them multiple times, and then they say they don't get it, like, it's a tough one, y'all. It's a tough one. But yes, noted. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Nelson has a comment.
Okay, Nelson.
I also like to thank the committee for all their hard work. I hope our constructive feedback to all of you will be taken into consideration. I know that you mentioned that you are in the fact-finding phase at this moment. I appreciate that you have opened it to the entire membership to hear our feedback and for you to continue to deliberate and to take it into consideration. And I just want to state for the record, I do not believe that students are second-class citizens. I love you all. You are the future of our association. I was involved in my association when I was a student. I didn't get to vote when I was a student on general matters of attorneys. I didn't take it personal. I also, when I made the comments about other professional associations, NAHJ, for example, doesn't allow its students to vote on the regular elections. I believe the Association of Asian American Journalists also doesn't allow it. Again, I'm not saying that that's the way we should continue to do it. I'm just take it into consideration, have an open discussion and be objective about it. And we'll defer to all your wisdom and when you vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all for giving, 2 hours of your time on a Saturday night. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to the committee. And thank you to all of you members for participating in this dialogue. Please note, you can reach out to us at any time. You can share that form. We will probably email. The next steps will be for us to meet again in a week, the committee. But we'll share, again, reshare the draft proposals. And probably we should email the members a link to this video so they can see it if they want to have a good time and watch a 2-hour discussion about bylaws. But being transparent and sharing that as much as possible. This conversation, our hope is to present with context and then have these conversations to improve our organization. But thank you all for spending the time with us. And with that, we will wrap up. And
thank you, Robert. It's been a pleasure.
Of course.
All of you, thank you very much for your work. You all obviously did a lot of work, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Kudos to everybody. Thank you.
Happy Saturday, the rest of the Saturday.
I'm gonna go and eat Chinese food now. I'm starving.
All right, and with that, we'll stop the recording.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.